Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Comics Fondle podcast. This is our first episode. My name is Andrew, and I have a comic book review blog at comicsfondle.com.
And this is Vernon and I, proprietor of the Comics Gallery, a brick-and-mortar retail shop located on the North Shore of Chicago.
And it is June... What? Uh-oh.
I think it's 28th.
June 28th, 2013, and we're a little bit late talking about our first topic, which is not news anymore, but somebody acted like it was news last week that Boom Studios bought up the intellectual property of Archaia Press.
Right. I even hear they kept a couple of staffers, too, right?
I didn't actually read enough about it to know, but what I found interesting about it was, well, first that the publicity release said that it made Boom the third largest publisher after DC and Marvel, which doesn't seem right off the top of my head. But then my next question was, what about the licensing that Archaia did?
Yeah, the quantum number they came at had some kind of designation about what type of books they have and like whether they're into like specialty stores more so than maybe anybody else. I don't know if they'd be Dark Horse with Star Wars books or something like that.
Well, are we talking about, because if you remove licensed properties, what does Boom have that isn't a licensed property that's currently going? And Archaia they did a lot of reprints, right? They reprinted The Killer.
Right. Translated for English, right.
Translated for English, so that's not really a property. Didn't they do, what was it? You read this one, The 10th World, or that very long series.
The historical one,
right. The historical one, The Good Artist. But I mean, that's not like in their that's not in their back catalog as far as something.
Do they own any of their own intellectual property, or do the creators own it? I think the creators have it over there.
I mean, Fraggle Rock is not. Archaia did the Fraggle Rock. I remember we got that when we were the first Chicago Comic Convention, whatever they're called, C2E2.
Right.
We got the Fraggle Rock preview.
Right, exactly. And there's not really that much there if you look for heavy hitters. I mean, The Killer was a great book. Right now, what do they got going for him? What's the one with them? A Mouse Guard, right? And that's that guy.
Okay,
David
so
Peterson.
that is, I think that's the one they kept bringing up.
Right.
And that is theirs, but it's creator owned. I mean,
right. Yeah,
so
I'm not. We're out there in video land or audio land or wherever you are right now. We're just Andrew and I are trying to figure out what is the big benefit to having Archaia. I mean, other than they survive, okay.
They've made it at least 6 years.
Yes, and
maybe longer. I mean,
I've heard they had some tumultuous times with a couple of their CEOs or whatever it is, and I don't know all the details, but I'm sure they're available out there. But they've had some missteps and. They probably needed some type of cash infusion. I mean, I heard that they went into the direct market of book sales and stuff like that and took hideous hits on returns like a lot of publishers do. And I know that they were really liquidating their books at every convention we've ever been to.
Well, I remember Fraggle Rock was 6-8 months late. Remember that? It was very late, and then they released like a hardcover album.
Yeah.
And it's like, nobody does that. Why would you...
Well, and the hardcover formats, to me, their publishing strategy was always a little bizarre. Oh, we're dedicated to hardcovers at Archaia. Well, all that's well and good, but what are you going to do for the person that's got less than $20 in the wallet to spend on comic books?
Yeah, I just find it. What I found interesting about it was that that number 3 position. Like, even if Dark Horse loses Star Wars, and Indiana Jones, they still have a really significant back catalog. I mean, do you really want to go toe for toe with all the intellectual property that's in Dark Horse Presents? I mean, there's, 100 or at least 75 different properties in there that theoretically Dark Horse has their finger on re-exploiting if they really wanted to. And, I mean, they're picking up new properties because Dark Horse is bringing back Bloodhound, which was a DC, and they're bringing it back with the original crew. They've got Bloodhound by Dan Jolie and Leonard Kirk and God, who was his inker? Is Robin Riggs the inker of the color? Robin Riggs is the inker,
I think. Yeah.
And Moose Bauman, the colorist, is back, and I think even the letterer is back. And it's like,
oh my God,
it's
the
like
whole gang.
it's the whole gang of talented people who got work at DC in the 2000 or the aughts when DC still paid people that, are willing to do it at Dark Horse now. And I mean, then really, I don't think that makes them bigger than Image.
Right.
So,
no, a long shot.
Yeah, it's a very weird
formula they concocted to say this. Yeah. I mean, well, the proof will be in the pudding. I mean, Boom has their certifiable hits. They have licensed materials like a lot of the smaller successful publishers do, and whether or not they can make hay with Archaicia's offerings, it seems a nice fit, and to try to put a positive spin on it as a retailer, I'd have to say that, anything that gets quality books in the hands of people and out there and being recognized, that's good. And there's a few things out there I think that Archaia could take advantage of, and maybe they can just make Boom more of a respectable publisher as a result of it. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel like Archaia always had the best artists of that tier.
Yeah, they always had the best of intentions. It was like very high art label, we don't mess around with guys who can't draw, or anybody, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's the non-news of the year. That's what I say. We'll see what happens anyway. I had my own little particular thing I wanted to mention tonight. Was DC's got this thing, and it's got all the retailers in a tither about Villains Month in October. And all of the entire DC line is going to go to point somethings. Batman will become Joker 23.1, and Penguin will become 23.2, and yada yada. And all these books are going to be covered with this, I'm going to say lenticular, although that might not be the right word. It's a new style of cover that deals with printing technology that's supposed to knock the pants off everybody, from what I've heard from retailers who attended DC's retailer summits regarding this. I'm still up in the air because, it's kind of funny because it's not just the entire line. It's like one-shot titles taking the place of everything they have. So it's not just an isolated or a theme thing that affects a few titles. It's like every single book in the DC line will be taken over by the villain of that series, and it'll be a one-shot, and it'll have a lenticular cover. And on one hand, you're torn between the dichotomy of appealing to the base. Well, if they buy Batman, they'll certainly buy Joker. Maybe, maybe not, And yet you've got the upswing of it, which dictates that a lot of people would just come in the door and buy things with shiny covers on them, So where do you go with this? And what does it mean? And is it just another cheap publicity stunt? Which I'm kind of leaning towards, after, Green Lantern plastic rings yet again, and now these lenticular covers. Well, I really beg for more content, but it seems to be an emphasis of this. And I'm afraid their regular customers are just going to take a pass this month because none of these books are part of the continuity of the books.
Really?
No.
Oh, wow.
And here is the death knell for me. The majority of them are done by fill-ins. So it's, so the whole line gets a month off.
So it's not even the mediocre people at best, mediocre people they have on their new 52 books. It's even worse. Teams.
Right, a lot of them are writers and artists that aren't normally associated with the title. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that if you collect DC Comics, you could take the whole goddamn month off? I don't know. That's scary to a retailer, And yet you've got all these lovely shiny objects that a lot of people are going to get just because they're nice decorations, I guess. I don't know. I'm still figuring that one out.
Yeah, I missed that. All I saw was that they're going to collect it into something like an 1,100-page hardcover.
Oh boy! There's boy. That's a lot of trees for that baby.
It's a lot of Chinese trees and a lot of Chinese children's tears.
Yes. Okay, that's a good way to put it. But they should make a $25 book, right? That just has the lenticular covers in it. I think they'll be much more efficient. And I think it'll sell better. What do you think?
No, because they'd have to figure out how to print the covers in China or wherever. And
oh, yeah, they got to do that. Yeah, they got to give away that lenticular technology.
Yeah, they'd have to give them the patent or something, and that'd just be the end of it. Wow, that's...
It's pretty... crazy. I don't know what to talk about as far as like, well, what are they doing? Giving everybody a month off? You know, there's one thing to have it like part of the regular storyline, or at least by the creator and the artist that are associated with the title.
Yeah.
But to just like pull a full break, and like a good majority of them are people that are not normally on the title. I'm like, God, I mean, you could just take a month off, which a lot of people do these days, you know.
Okay, that's okay. Wow.
That's my rant on that one, anyway.
That's kind of, I was going to say that, you know, it's like every week on Monday afternoon, I look at the Diamond shipping list to see what I need to be aware of, and I never even look at DC anymore.
No, it's pretty moribund.
And I feel bad not because of any of the DC stuff, because I'm like, oh crap, like what am I missing in the unwritten? But, you know I got to catch up on that. But otherwise, I'm like, well, there's nothing there I need to worry about.
Yeah, you know, you'd have to say that for the first time in a long time, DC reading is strictly non-essential if you're a regular comic book reader. I mean, there's some passion for Batman there, okay, and Green Lantern did his third or fourth big major color crossover thingy. But, you know, it's really hard to just dig into the depths of the DC line and say, I have to read these comic books, you know?
I mean, I think that could just be fallout from the New 52, and also the fact that they hired a bunch of crappy people to work on those books. I mean,
that may, you know, I'm thinking, what else could that be but money, like cost-cutting moves, you know?
Well, there was some news last week that the guy who put the thumb down on DC Comics to make money, Jeff Robinov, he left Warner Brothers, and the guy who's replacing him is the guy who always gave Paul Levitz a free pass.
Oh, really?
So it's entirely possible. Heidi McDonald had a thing that at all the sports bars in New York, all these comics guys were saying, you know, oh, well, Paul Levitz will be back in the publisher seat no time flat. So that'd be a good move, I guess. But, I mean, at this point,
it's a hell of a train wreck, and you really got a lot of...
I mean, how are you going to right this ship? Like,
you start from scratch and reinvent the wheel is what you're going to have to do.
You're going to what? You're going to jump back to pre-New 52, or what are you going to do? I mean, what's even the point?
Yeah, it would be very scary to, like, start out a campaign that says, DC, the new 52, where you can ignore everything you just paid for the past 2.5 years.
Exactly, and one would hope that maybe it would just mean better guys getting jobs there. And I mean, this all happened, I think, Bob Harris, right? It's Bob Harris is over there now, and he's the Marvel stooge who hired all these Marvel X-Men deadbeats like Scott Lobdell.
Well, DC had a lot of holes to fill in for writers, and because writers seem to be like leaving them like droves over there. At least the ones that we're familiar with. We have a lot of unknown names as writers now. I mean, it must be a great time to be Jeff Lemire right now, where you're like, wow, I never thought I'd get this much work, you know?
Yeah, and I guess another issue, and this will nicely segue into my first rant of the evening, is how much the assistant editors, like, how much power do these... Because at Marvel you have, if the credits and sort of the perception they promote is correct, you have these assistant editors at Marvel, and then they answer to a group editor, or not even a group editor, but like somebody who's a little bit over them who then has a group editor. At DC, it seems more like you have an assistant editor, maybe a name editor that you recognize, and then that's it.
Yeah, it might be more of a streamlined process. I mean, you can certainly tell in the quality of the titles.
They need to... I mean, one thing would be to shit can all those editors. I mean, John Rosem's, he was on Static Shock, which was an amusingly awful comic book.
I don't know if amusing was the right word for it, but please continue.
Well, I mean, and he was the one who was like, you know, I'm dealing with this editor, and this guy's an idiot. The editor's an idiot, and it's just like he did not foster a good relationship between me and the artist. And so it seems like that's what DC was promoting. But moving on to a Marvel editor who today or yesterday I took notice to, Nick Lowe over at Marvel.
I don't keep up with the editors. I'll assume Nick Lowe is an editor.
He's an editor. He just did you read Fury Max 13?
No, I sold all my copies before I read it.
Bastard! Oh, I needed you to have read it, but all right. So I can't spoil anything about it.
Sorry, I'm busy as shit in the summer. My apologies.
Okay, it ends with a letter from him, Nick Lowe, who I'm like, who is this? Is he Rob Lowe's brother? Because if he's Rob Lowe's brother, I might listen to him. But otherwise, I got no reason to listen to this guy, right?
As we all know, Rob Lowe is the source of genius.
Right. I mean, it's just like, who's Nick Lowe? Like, okay. Like, it's not like a letter from the publisher or something.
Or even Garth Ennis, right?
Right. It's Nick Lowe telling you how awesome this comic is and how it's the most important comic you've ever read.
Maybe the one he's ever edited or something.
And he was on, I saw... He was on like Twitter talking about how it was the greatest comic book ever. Not the series, but this comic book specifically was the greatest. This particular one. Okay, now this one here is the dovetail, right? It's the resolution to the series.
Okay, because like he finished the mission, they went back home, yada yada. He beat up Barracuda in the last issue, and that was that. But we figured, okay, there's one more to go, so he's got to tie up everything, right?
Yeah, it ties up everything.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta read it, but I mean, I'm like, did you not read the first issue of this series? Like, if you're really looking for a best comic ever, because I don't know, like, there's some really good.
Now Nick Lowe said you had the best comic in your hands that you're
in your
reading
hands
now.
Ever that has ever existed in the universe, the most profound comic book ever, and it ignores what happened in one. No, it doesn't ignore what happened. I can't spoil it for you since you haven't read it, but I'm just saying that if he really thinks that it's the best comic book ever, then he hasn't read that many comics. Well, he hasn't read that many comics, but he should be fired. But that many good comics. Yeah, I mean, it's really bad. Oh, that's too bad. I mean, you just let it go. It's the last issue of the series. We'll tie it up. We're done. You know. What I found interesting was, Garth didn't comment. Garth didn't have a letter, and then Garth doing work at Marvel was kind of questionable to me in the first place. I'm like, oh, he's got to pay some taxes or something, because otherwise, he just work at Avatar where they don't make him submit to any editor, not some incompetent editor, just nobody at all. Like, yeah, you never thought you'd see the day when the editorial process at Avatar was more efficient than the one at Marvel. Yeah, I mean it gives you this impression that Nick Lowe is this fanboy going, oh, look at this great comic book, whereas as opposed to I really put the thumbs down on Garth and Gore and Parlov to get their asses to work on this, which is his job as an editor, not to belabor the point. So that was an interesting thing. What else is coming out? Oh, so I wanted to ask you, what did you think about the tail end? You didn't give me a thumbs up or down on 13 Fury. I don't want to spoil it for you. Well, you're not spoiling it for me. Was it good? Was it worth reading? I mean, I'll read it someday. I may not. I know. I mean, was the series worth reading? Yes, the series. Oh, the series is worth reading. The series is definitely worth reading. Is number 13 worth reading? It's not a good way to finish, is basically what you're saying. I'm saying that if it was one of those comics where the last part never comes out, okay, and you're always hoping for this awesome last part, right? That might have been a better situation for it. I gotcha. Yeah. Oh, that's sad. Well, you know what? It's weird. Garth is doing for hire work, and he's I'm looking at what's the name of that book? You might have to. Is it Red Team? Yes, I saw that. I haven't. It's really bizarre because it's really a talking heads book, okay, and it's about a group of rogue policemen who get tired of missing opportunities to get these criminals and decide to take matters into their own hands, and it's very procedural, and it's what's really strange is it's done in the past tense after all the acts have been done, so the police talk about their roles in it, and I'm like, okay, there's not much action. And I'm trying to think, where's this going, And he set himself up with a device that I'm not sure it's going to work well for him in the long run because there's not enough action, and you already know how it ends, kind of. So there's got to be some kind of spin here that I'm missing. I feel. Go ahead. Well, remember when Battlefield started, and I think the publisher of Dynamite, what's that guy's name, Nick Bertulli or whatever his name is?
Okay, that sounds good to me.
He was like, I want to be in the Garth. He was like, I went to Garth Ennis and I was like, Garth, I want to be in the Garth Ennis business. What are we gonna do? And Garth Ennis is like, all I want to do is war stories.
And then he says, well, I'll publish a war comic.
And he's like, I'll publish a war comic for you, okay. And then you read Battlefields, and Battlefields is like this beautiful mix of history and just like, oh my God, the rise and fall of Anna Kournikova, whatever the fuck her name is.
Right. And
like,
Garth got to pick all his own artists, yeah,
I'm just dying at that thing. And I feel like, and it Crossed. The first arc of Crossed. I haven't read any more that he's done in the first arc of Crossed, but, Crossed is the last, I want to say definitely the last issue, but maybe the last 2 issues. Cross just kicks your ass. Like Cross
it goes into zones that only Garth can go to.
Yeah, and I mean it breaks your knees with a fucking baseball bat. It's just awful. It's just terrible.
The first trade of Cross collection, if you can handle it, is one of the best things since Butter Bread.
I almost think he's hit. I think he's hit a wall.
It's possible because he's not doing work for the big 2. I'd say this Fury project was money, right?
I mean, it was money. Some of it was really good. Like the first 4 issues were awesome. But then it gets drug out. But
you should read Red Team, and we'll talk about that next, as it were. And I'm trying to think, what else is he doing? Not much. He's kind of taking a sabbatical.
He did that shadow thing, and it's just like, well,
right, exactly. That's another example. But all this is work for Dynamite again, where he doesn't have editorial interference, and they provide the art for Shadow Dude or whatever.
And did you watch Skitched? Remember that?
No.
You still haven't watched that piece of shit?
Sorry, I got a life, but what can I tell you?
We actually have it at the library, which is scary. My day job is I'm a librarian, and Garth Ennis did a 15-minute movie with Brian Pulido and Brian Pulido's wife producing called Skitched, which set up the miniseries Skitched, with I think Mike Wolfer wrote, and I was like, what? Okay, the Mike Wolfer Garth Ennis connection being weird. And it was really awful, but it seemed like he was trying to branch out into movies.
Right.
Or at least something like that. And it's like, but you read Battlefields and you're like, he's like a history professor who tells really good stories is what Garth Ennis is what he needs to go to next. And there's really no place for him in comics for that avenue.
There really isn't.
Yeah.
Who was it? John Kane, I think it was. He does a blog or works with Brian Hibbs' blog. And he was talking about what a crime it was that Battlefields didn't sell. You know what I mean? And so I wrote him an email. I said, A, war stories. Nobody does war stories anymore in comics. And B, Dynamite, that's a publisher that's it's adequate to retailers, but we kind of stay away from it a lot of times because it's not very good. And but you're right. I mean, Garth is just out of his element with the kind of stuff he does. His war stories are just absolute tearjerkers.
It's amazing stuff, and then he's got to do this other stuff. But even Crossed was this amazing thing, and I remember it was only going to be 12 issues or whatever he initially did, but then they sold the movie rights, and so they were like, holy shit, we're going to make a fortune on this, so we got to keep it going, but then the movie rights reverted and all this.
Yep.
You just got to wonder, does he enjoy even an eighth of the shit he has to do anymore?
It's true. You look at all these old guys, the old guard, Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, Warren Ellis, and you're like, okay, they were like really big hits in their day when they had a lot of enthusiasm for the field, but what are they doing now? And that kind of says stuff about the comics field in general.
And 2 of those guys you mentioned aren't doing comics right now.
Yes,
Alan Moore's working on this book. Warren Ellis is working on this book. Did you read
Fashion Beast yet?
I read Fashion Beast.
Okay.
I hate Anthony Johnston with the passion of 1,000 suns.
Okay, yeah.
But Passion Beast does some wonderful stuff in it. But yeah, it does this. But
Oh, that's right. He didn't do Fashion Beast.
He didn't do Fashion Beast. It's his dialogue with Anthony Johnston's inexplicable adaptation, which I don't know why they have
well in some places and less so in others. Let's put it that way.
I don't know why they have that guy do it. Like, is it because he's British? Because he sounds British? I mean, is that the only reason, or is he just really cheap to Avatar?
He could be friends with the owner. I don't know.
That's true. Maybe he cleans William Christensen's, washes his car. Maybe he's like the British exchange student across the street. Well,
anyway, we started out this about editorial interference, and there's almost none in current comics. It's almost like a job that's gone right now, and it's a babysitter's job to keep the trains running on time between the college interns. I'm really sorry if anybody hears that and knows otherwise, but it seems like that to the outside observer. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I haven't read a Marvel book except by their, like, I've read Hawkeye, but that's by Matt Fraction, so he gets to do whatever he wants. I think the feeling.
Did you see the new issue of that?
I gotta catch up. I know.
Okay.
Somebody was like, what was it? Gary Groth was like, Hawkeye 11 is the best comic I've read all month.
You know, it probably is. And
I'm gonna read it. But be careful. Be careful how you explain it.
Well, let's put it this way. Fraction and Aja take Marvel Comics somewhere they haven't been before. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I was talking to my customer about whether or not I don't think Marvel heads will accept it. But then again, they're not the ones reading Hawkeye anyway. Okay? And I think it was a fun exercise. But I, as a retailer and a connoisseur, I'd like to see more meat. How's that sound? I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
I always have seen Hawkeye as sort of a proof of concept. Because, I mean, Matt Fraction really, when he did Invincible Iron Man, that was really like, hey, it's Iron Man, the movie. You know, you guys can rip this off. You know, like Pepper Potts in the outfit. There you go.
Oh, yeah. It was perfect.
And so, like, Hawkeye would be, if they made a Hawkeye movie out of the Hawkeye comic book, that'd be really funny. I mean, they couldn't pull it off with the guy they had play Hawkeye in the Avengers, but whatever.
Well, with this new issue, you wouldn't even be able to do it because it's a kind of comic book that can only exist in comic book form.
Which you don't really see Marvel doing a lot ever, so that's interesting.
That's what I said.
It's after I get done with the latest Fatale trade, I'm gonna do that. Okay.
Okay, good. And that gets better too, by the way. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Moving on. Let's get Man of Steel over with because you didn't like it. No, I really didn't. I'm sorry. It just had enough logical holes to run a train through, and my wife, who's not into superheroes or comic books, was very nonplussed as well, and we don't do spoilers here anyway, but her comment on the last scene of the movie where you see Clark and she goes, "Are newspapers hiring?"
You know, you said the same thing to me before you even saw it. I think that, we can talk about one spoiler, or at least one issue. Did you have a big problem with the divisive scene, the resolution to him and Zod that has Mark Miller?
It upset me just as much as it did Mark Millar.
Not Mark Miller, Mark Waid.
Mark Waid, excuse me.
It did upset you that much.
Yes, it did, because Superman is the one godlike being in our fictionalized DC society, which is even stated to himself, in not so many words, I have the power of a god, and I will never kill. And I'm like, and I believe in that tenet. Okay, to me that was like the absolute effing of the DC universe when they decided to go with that. It really upset me.
Okay, I find that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was something when you read from Mark Waid, I know that you couldn't really relate to when you told me last week, but we didn't know why he was so upset. And once I saw the film, I was like that, and then you said, "Oh, that's the moment." I'm like, you're right. I was very upset that he killed Zod, that he's Superman. He should have figured out a way to get around that, because that's what Superman does. That's why he's Superman. And I was just saying, okay, I can handle Daredevil killing, and that was a step for me, okay? I'm old school. But Superman, no, it really rubbed me the wrong way. I'm sorry.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there was other things. I mean, there was a lot more things that upset me, and more than that, but that was a bad one. It really was.
Okay. Interesting.
You weren't expecting that, were you?
Well, I was thinking, it's not my generation. I don't think Mark Waid did it, but Tom Spurgeon posted, he didn't comment on it, but he posted I think he posted something like, Mark Waid is the only one who has anything valid to say about this. And then he posted a picture of like a 60s Superman saying he'd never kill.
Exactly.
Except
Superman doesn't kill.
I grew up I grew up a little bit pre-Crisis, but when I actually picked up a Superman comic that I remember I picked up one of those freaking Superman Exiles because it had like updated Who's Who in the back when I was 12 or 10 or 11 or some shit like that. And that's why I picked it up. And so Superman had killed like Zod in the Mirror Universe or whatever. And so I actually see it as like, I feel like that's the problem with DC is that they don't.
Well, I have different feelings about a character like Batman. I'm not going to go into it in detail now, but when I said Batman and Catwoman on film, I was pretty sexually explicit about what I thought like a adult movie should be, right? But a Superman still has this basic tenet. He doesn't kill. Where I could accept Batman killing.
But you had to.
What's that?
Well, no. Well, first of all, Superman, Christopher Reeve killed Zod back in the day, and he killed him when he was powerless. Because my wife didn't like the movie, and she didn't like it, and I was like, well, what about when he killed Zod? Did you have a problem with that? And she's like, he was about to burn that kid. No, I didn't have a problem with that. And
those kids were toast. That was another thing anyway. If those heat vision beams were coming out the way they were, those guys would have been like burgers on a grill. I'm sorry.
And she's like, it's better than in Superman 2 when, Zod didn't have any powers and he killed him. And, he killed the other two, too. And then,
no, wait a minute. Superman 2, is that the one just before this one? Or am I?
No, Superman 2 back in 81.
He killed Zod in that?
Zod in that. And everybody's like, Mark Waid's like, well, I didn't like that one either. And it's like, okay.
Okay, well that's a disclaimer, but I maybe it's because I saw the movie. What year did that come out?
81.
Oh, I was an adult at that point. Maybe I don't know how I missed that.
You were young. You were a youngish adult, but
20. I told about movies.
So he killed, and so a lot of I think the bad guys died at the end of Superman 3. I mean, so, but it raised an interesting point to me, and here I will present you with a conundrum, and if you can answer it now, you can answer it now, or you can think about it and answer it on our next episode.
Sure.
Lex Luthor is a multi-billionaire in Superman, in Man of Steel.
He's got as much money as Bruce Wayne.
He's got as much money as Bruce Wayne. In Man of Steel 2, okay? The villain. All right? He's a pedophile.
Ooh, gross.
Right. He owns the U.S. government. He will never go to jail. Nothing.
Probably not.
Right. What's Superman going to do about it?
Make sure he never gets in contact with children ever again.
How's he going to do that, Vernon?
I don't know, but he's really fucking smart, man.
Okay. All right. Okay.
He's Superman. He'll find a way. I swear to God. That one child will rest in Luthor's heel.
Okay. I'm just saying, like, they do this. Like, it's going to be a very different. This is the other thing, and if you listen to my other podcast, you know that I was not a Roger Ebert fan.
Although he liked comic book films, right?
He did. He loved comic book films, and he loved comic book films.
He wasn't objective in his reviews.
He loved comic book films not only by he loved the Batman movies by Christopher Nolan, but he also loved Watchmen. He called Watchmen like the future of American cinema or some shit, right?
Yeah. And he was right.
What made me
He's right. Half the films that are out there are all roller coaster rides like Watchmen. So
but I feel like it would have been a very interesting thing if he had been alive to review Superman or Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Because I assume he would have loved it. And then you would have had people like Kurt Busiek and Mark Waid going, well, Roger Ebert doesn't know anything about comic books, so we don't have to listen to him. Except that's the exact opposite of what they had said previously about, it's like you have to listen to me because I know about comic books. And I feel like, I don't know if it's I've actually not talked to anyone else personally who liked Man of Steel as much as I did.
You like Man of Steel.
I love that movie. I was sitting there during that movie thinking to myself, This is going to be the first theatrical release that I'm going to buy on Blu-ray.
Right.
And B, I really hope that they do like a 4-hour version. Like, I love absolutely.
You liked all that noise. I think after an hour, my ears were bleeding from all the
everything
noise.
about it, except probably Amy Adams, and she wasn't in enough to ruin it. It was the
Who's Amy Adams? Ma Kent?
Lois Lane. It's
Oh.
what is it? It's the Daredevil director's cut theory of bad actresses. In the Daredevil director's cut, they added 20 minutes that had none of Jennifer Garner in it, and everybody was like, she seemed so much better. And somebody was like, well, it's because the movie's 20 minutes longer, and she's not in those 20 minutes, so it's like, percentage-wise, she's in it less. So as long as Amy Adams doesn't have more to do, I mean, I think I'd be okay with it. But I loved the crap out of that movie. I thought it was...
Okay, let me ask you one quick question. Okay, obviously Superman doesn't have reverence for life. We understand that now because he killed somebody at the end of this film. But okay, he rescues Lois. He rescues Ma Kent. But then he whips Zod through buildings where we just know the carnage is like, okay, there goes another 4,000 or 5,000 people because they're fighting in Metropolis going through buildings.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I thought that it was interesting that they didn't try and be lame about it like they did in the Avengers, which I found more offensive.
Right. They just glossed over the death.
They just glossed over it in Superman, which they do in all the Superman movies, quite frankly.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
They did it. We talked about this years ago. They did it at the end of Batman Begins when they destroy downtown Gotham with that stupid bullet train, and they gloss over it there.
Or even Transformer movies where you watch these big robots just destroy everything, and you're like, God, there goes another 4,000 or 5,000 lives.
I don't actually have an issue with that. Just because...
Well, you know what? It kind of derails reality, and it lets you indulge in violence without showing the repercussions. Not that you have to, but I don't know. That's a slippery slope for me. It can be done well, or it can be done stupidly, where you just don't have any other things to say. You know what I mean?
I felt that. Well, or Godzilla movies. Come on. I've been watching Godzilla
you knew people were
movies
dying in Godzilla, man.
No, you don't. They didn't show people dying in Godzilla movies between 1956... All right, the first Godzilla movie was 54. The second one was out by Christmas. So between 1954 Christmas, Godzilla raids again, in 1984, the Godzilla relaunch, they didn't kill any people except for the
I don't know about
monster.
84, but I'm thinking when you go back that far, you're like, okay, it's like the earliest versions of like cities being destroyed, and I just think that automatically when you're looking
it's the same thing as Mark Miller going, well, of course the Hulk killed lots of people with that falling debris. That didn't occur to anybody at Marvel for 30 years. I mean,
well, I think that over time, violence like that becomes negligible. Just because when it was done first, like you see in Godzilla, when you see big fucking monsters destroying a city, you think, oh, those poor people, while all that shit happens. But you don't even think about that in a film like Superman, where you're just like, I hope Superman hits Zod one more time and gets the advantage. Who cares about how many people die?
I mean, in that sequence of the movie, I actually was like, I think this is an homage to Superman 2, just based on the way they're lighting this scene. It didn't bother me because, I mean, it really de-escalated Superman down to a far more grounded angle. I didn't see him as being omniscient.
Okay.
So I mean, he was trying to solve a problem, and I think that I didn't really read Heidi McDonald's review of it because it seemed Heidi McDonald's review of things is very interesting. It's like this mix of like comic book reverence with like she likes guys who are built well.
Okay.
But she was like,
we don't get Amy Adams that looks interesting.
So I think Heidi made some comment where she was like, this isn't a Superman who thinks his way out of the problem. It's a Superman who, can get the job done or some shit like that.
What? Oh my gosh. Okay.
But the thing that I loved, and I mentioned this on my movie podcast, is the scene where Superman beats the crap out of Zod from his house in Smallville to downtown Smallville.
Okay.
What he's like, dude, you thought you could go after my mother? Like, what do you think I'm going to do to you? And I feel like... okay,
well,
you're not doing a sequential adaptation. You're not doing this is a movie event. Like, these things are going to come out once every 2 to 3 years. You know, you want to see a Superman who's going to, in my opinion, like, you go after Superman's mom, like, that's the scariest thing in the world. Like, you are... And Batman doesn't have that, because you go after Alfred, like, what's he's gonna like get upset about it. Like, he'll get stone-faced about it. But, I mean, it's like, if they did this in, like, a Spider-Man movie, right? Like, if in a Spider-Man movie they actually had the stones to have Dr. Octopus trying to seduce Peter Parker's aunt... Like,
that'd be gross.
Yeah, it'd be gross. But can you even imagine, like, what he would do? Like, if they were like, okay, we need to sell this scene. We need to sell what, you know, a superpower...
Well, they didn't sell me on that scene.
They didn't sell you on that scene when he was kicking
not
ass?
Not at all, because his buddies were all... The chick, who to me was the most powerful because she got into the shit as she was transforming into a super person, she adapted quickly to me because she was enjoying it. She was there. All the compatriots were there. And Ma Kent was still there. So Superman disappears with Zod, okay, because he's going to beat the crap out of him. Meanwhile, he's left the Kryptonian warriors with his mother, who all they have to do is take their hand around her neck, say, Kal-El, get back here. And he's got to come back.
Is that how it played, or were they following him?
They were there. They were there.
I thought they were following him in the spaceship.
Well, whatever it was, they knew that they knew that Ma Kent was a piece, and why not?
Well, let's not forget this is the ultimate Spider-Man version of Superman, where everybody fucking knows who Superman is too.
True. Yeah. Well.
So anyway, all right, moving on. What else were we going to talk about tonight?
Well, let's see. How do we tie it up? That's a good way to do it.
Well, let's see. I read Lazarus. You haven't read Lazarus yet.
No, I haven't.
It's
got
better
a great
than
pedigree.
Stumptown. Let me say that.
Thank God for that. Well, he's got a real artist now.
He's got Michael. I'm just like, what does Greg Rucka have, like, blackmail on Michael Lark? Because it's from Image, so you know, right? It's from Image.
Right, it's from Image.
Right, so Michael Lark's getting paid on the back end. So, yeah, it's like, okay.
Well, it's a limited series, too, probably. And what's Michael Lark doing anyway? I don't see him working for Marvel. I don't see him working for DC.
He gave an interview. I linked to it on the Comics Gallery's Facebook page. I haven't read it yet. But he gave an interview about how I guess he's not interested in really working for them. And they really didn't know how to use him. They put him on Daredevil.
Well, there wasn't too many titles he can do. He's not a superhero.
He's not a superhero artist, but he never did a long-term Punisher engagement, which I feel like he would have been fine. He would have been good for.
Right. That's true. If they could sell that book in that kind of numbers, I know that was the thing. You know, was this Lee Weeks? He's doing a Daredevil miniseries, and you know he's like one of those old school guys. But yet it's like nobody wants to buy it. It's like, oh shit, too bad. Sorry, Lee. I tried. You know.
Yeah. What else have I read? I read The Fez. Roger Langridge's little
now, is that real or just digital?
Oh, I think he's doing a mini comic of it, too. But, I mean, it's 12 pages. But it's like, it's amazing because it's like, it's 12 pages of Roger Langridge, and it's like, it takes longer to read than, 32 pages of somebody else.
How about 3 regular comics from Marvel or DC? You know?
Oh, wow. What else? I got
I think you mentioned you got the Private Eye under your belt finally.
I got the first issue of the Private Eye under my belt, which I found very interesting because
it's formatted for the computer.
It's formatted for the computer. It's not even formatted for, like, the iPad. It is formatted for a 16:9 computer monitor, which is
horizontal computer monitor. It's a horizontal comic.
It's a horizontal comic for widescreen aspect ratio monitor, which and it's like it gives you more Marcos Martin for your buck.
Not to mention that juicy coloring looks great when it's backlit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely little. It's very derivative, but it looks great, and I mean, it's. I feel like the fact that they did this online only, that I assume Brian K. Vaughan is paying Marcos Martin out of his own pocket.
Well, it might be a spare time thing for both of them. I don't know.
With that lost TV money, or maybe Marcos Martin has more of the percentage or something.
I don't know. Yeah, he did put some work into it.
But it's a really lovely book that you can literally pay, I think, a penny for.
Oh, don't do that. Though.
Don't do that. Pay more for it. But it's beautiful art from Marcos Martin, and it's very enthused, and it reminds of Marcos Martin's one of those guys who, once he got to the big two, he did Beware the Creeper, right? Was that him? No, that was Cliff Chiang. That's
Cliff Chiang, yeah.
So Cliff Chiang and Marcos Martin, I think, alternated on Human Target.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, Chang had some. I think a lot of the Spanish guys worked on Human Target, though, too.
And it was a great-looking book and everything, but it's like, it didn't have that much personality from the artist. Private Eye has a lot of personality from the artist. This is a really good art book.
You know what it reminded me of to some degree? Early Jaime Hernandez from Love and Rockets.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
No, I mean, you got to it first, because it's back when they were still doing the futuristic stuff. Yeah, it's like when the Hernandez brothers did Mr. X for the first 4 issues. It's like, it was really good stuff.
And it's a learning primer for people who want to color digital comics online. I mean, this guy handled a lot of stuff, or whoever is it. A woman? Gosh, I'm sorry.
It's a guy. I don't think Marcos Martin drew that on a freaking computer.
Possibly not.
I mean, if he did, he's using a much better computer than that last hack I saw who did Rucka's Stumptown that he drew it on the computer. And you're like, really? You drew this in Microsoft Paint from, 1993.
It might have been a big manila tablet with a piece of charcoal, too.
Man.
Right.
You got the Half Men from Huizinga, right?
Yes. Haven't read the Half Men yet, though.
I got the Half Men and his little how-to guides.
Ooh, cute.
Yeah, so I haven't read them yet, but they came in the mail yesterday, so I'm very excited about those. Or these little how-to guides, or like it's like a math book or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, print it on my inkjet printer, and I cut it for you. It says on the back, or something like that.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and it's like, there you go. There's Huizinga working for you, and then you got to pause and think, okay, so in 1989, this is the guy Dark Horse would have been like, yeah, we're promoting Huizinga as opposed to we're promoting a series about, I don't know, Darth Vader's Footman or something. That sucked. We haven't talked about that.
Darth Vader's Footman?
No, the Brian Wood's Star Wars comic.
Oh, man, I'd love to say that I like to read Star Wars, but I can't.
Well, are you even aware of the concept of this thing?
Well, it's like after the first movie, right?
It's after the first movie, but theoretically, it's not going to take into account any of the knowledge that came after the first movie.
Okay.
So you don't know that Luke and Leia are brother and sister. You don't know Darth Vader's Luke's dad. All you supposedly have is the information from the first movie in 1977. They're like, this is the comic that came out a week after Star Wars opened in the movie theater.
So, what does that do to the person that knows all that shit already?
Well, the better part is there's already a freaking comic that does that. It's called Star Wars number 6 from Marvel Comics in 1977 because they started, their comic series after the freaking movie and didn't know from Lucasfilm what was going on. And I was like,
that's right.
And it's like, it's got a really mediocre manga-influenced Dark Horse artist on it. And I was like,
okay.
I think I'd rather read it from Marvel, because even if the script's crappy, I think they had Howie Shaken doing it for the first 20 issues,
Yeah, even the worst guy at Marvel was better than the best guy at a lot of indie publishers.
Yeah, so, it's a very interesting, just bad book. They, build up the co-pilots and stuff, and I'm like, you'd never build this guy up in 1977 because, he hadn't had a series of novels or 30 freaking Dark Horse miniseries about him yet. It's very, this was and it's selling really well, but it's got Alex Ross covers. So,
well, yeah.
You're not. Alex... Are you putting it out, or are you just?
Oh yeah, we're selling it.
Yeah, you're selling them.
I actually because I had cut off all the Star Wars stuff. I carry that one particular title.
See, there you go.
We can do it there, yeah. And the Alex Ross covers, they're spankerific. What can I tell you?
Which is,
I looked at, I'm looking at, Dynamite's got like a Battlestar Galactica, comic right now. And I mean, it's pretty low budget. But it's got Alex Ross covers. I'm thinking, did he get like 50% of the budget on this comic to do this cover? And he must have. Because that's what sells it,
There you go. Alex Ross covers, where it's 1995 all over again.
I'm telling you.
I don't know if anything else. Okay, so we talked.
I was looking at, wasn't one of my favorite titles is Dream Thief. I know you haven't had a chance to read that.
Yeah, the second issue just came out. I know.
And that was some hot stuff. That was like my pick of the month. That was like one of the better constructed comics I've seen in a long time. Marvel and DC should read Dream Thief and figure out how to do a comic. I think that's their best example right now. But I think that pretty much covers all the ground we needed to cover today. Anyway.
Yeah, I think so. So our next episode, maybe a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, not a month. We haven't really decided on a schedule yet, but
yeah, we're grown men with lives. What can we tell you?
Yeah. Okay, so the website is comicsfondle.com, but the best way to get in touch with us is on Facebook at Facebook /The Comics Gallery.
Comics with an X.
Comics with an X, and Comics Fondle doesn't have an X. So, just keep those two things straight. Yeah.
And a lot of people like the Comics Gallery Facebook page because it's a good place for information. And,
yes, Comics Fondle doesn't really have any information. It just has my nasty comments about comic books.
Well, man, it's great. It's great stuff. Good reading. I hate to be a brown noser, but it's the greatest short reviews that you'll spend very little time reading. No kidding.
Just complaining about everything except for whatever Pulp Up does, but no, not really. So those two places, and then we're gonna be on iTunes, I think, and there'll be links in both those places to iTunes. And so, I mean, this was the first episode, and
we strive to make you happy and make better.
Yeah, that's it. We will be more on target next time, I guess.
I think we did pretty good.
I think we did
we'll
pretty.
Try.
Yeah,
I was very happy about it.
Yeah, next time, I don't know if we'll hit the San Diego thing, but maybe we'll do a.
Let's boycott San Diego.
Do you want to boycott San Diego, or do you want to do a really cynical San Diego recap?
I don't know. I think we'll figure it out. But either way, it's not going to be pro San Diego. We've got that down pat, obviously.
No, it's not going to be.
Right.
Yeah, all right. So for Comics Fondle Podcast, this has been Andrew.
And this has been Vernon.
And thank you for listening.
Have a good one, kids. Bye.
Please don't touch me! Ah!